Hey guys, this is Mike coming at you today from Player One Video Games. We didn't get many trade-ins this weekend, so what I want to focus on, and I used to do this on Facebook a lot, back when we did Facebook videos more, is I used to take a system and tell you the real world experience, not what you read on Google, not what you read on the old World Wide Web, but hey, what was it truly like? Give me the feel of what was the Turbografx 16 like back in 1989 when it came out, and the couple years that it was around. So look, I'm going to tell you what my real world experience was with it. Okay, it was September of 1989. It was a warm September day, my friend. Me, and it was actually my high school sweetheart, we went to Toys R Us when it was on Baybrook. In September of '89. So she knew I wanted the Genesis, and I had been waiting and waiting and waiting. Back then, you didn't know when something was going to come out. You knew the kind of the roundabout when it was going to, but not the exact date. So I said, let's go to Toys R Us, see if the Genesis is in. Sega Genesis. So we get there, and I see the Sega Genesis. I went, all right. And then I just do a glance to this side, and I see Turbografx. Never really heard of it, nothing. Came out the exact same time as the Genesis, and I was like, oh my God, the Turbografx, the Genesis, which one do I get? Which one do I get? I could not decide because they both were going to have John Madden football was what I was after. They were both going to have John Madden football, and you know, there's only so much you can look on the back of that they had flip cards back then at Toys R Us, and you pulled a slip and you went and bought the game. So what my deciding factor was to if I should buy the Turbo or the Genesis was I looked at the controller. The Genesis had 3 buttons, the Turbo only 2. And I went, this Turbo controller looks like my NES controller. It can't be that good of a system. I'm buying the Sega Genesis because it has 3 buttons. That extra, it's got to have 33% more power. It's got that extra button, right? Or however much the percentage is. And of course, I was right. The Genesis at the time head to head was better than the Turbo. But did I wind up buying a Turbografx? No. So I never owned a Turbografx 16 when it was alive, when it was active. What made me almost buy a Turbo was when the Turbo Express came out like a year or so later. This thing blew me away, but when this came out, because you could play its games directly on this Turbo Express, the Turbografx 16 games, and they were great on there. But this little guy was $400, and I knew it was a dead system about to die. Even though the Turbo CD came out, and you could get like 10 free games with it for $400. You still had to have this to bump it up onto to expand it out. So what was my feel of the Turbografx back then? You got to remember, in the 80s, made in Japan, or the Japanese kind of culture was a little odd to America. You know, it was might as well had been on Mars. You couldn't read about Japan much. You couldn't see anything about Japan. You couldn't know what games they had. I didn't even know if Famicom existed, you know, during when it was out. So it was cut off to, you know, from my world at least. And when I looked at some of the Turbo games, I went, man, these games are kind of odd. They're weird a little bit. It was my perception. And so I thought, well, I like the Genesis better. It's more American, you know, it had sports titles and it had things like that. It had Golden Axe and Streets of Rage, stuff like that. But when you do compare game to game, in actuality, a Turbo game is like a little bit better than an NES, but not quite as good as a Genesis. Because, you know, this actually came out in Japan as the PC Engine in '87. So it was 2-year-old technology going up against 1989 Genesis. And back then, 2 years was a ton of time. But I did wind up getting a Turbografx when eBay first came out in like '98. I bought one off of eBay and bonked Turbografx and a few games like that. One cool thing now, to me, the Turbografx 16 is one of the coolest system out, mainly because the 98 games or however many in its library is very unique. Like, this is one of the few games on the system. Well, you can play Bonk's Adventure on the NES, but that didn't come out till later.
Tell us about Clax.
Clax, it's the 90s, and there is time for Clax. So, but this is one of the few games you can play on other systems. But it has really unique gameplay, and the shooters are great. This right here is my second favorite shooter of all time, Sidearms. It has great gameplay, really unique, and you can pretty much only play it on the Turbografx. And if you've never seen a Turbografx game, they call them Hue cards or turbo chips. They're very thin, like credit card almost sized. So at that time I was like, that can't be that powerful. Those little chips, no way. So there was a lot of decisions, a lot of factors that why it didn't make it in America. But now that the dust is settled and it's not competing against anybody, the system is a great system. Lots of fun. If you like the NES, if you like the Genesis era, this is a really good system to buy. And of course, this is a system right here. And it had expansions like Turbo Booster on the back, and so you could do AV out, or had a Turbo Booster plus memory. I can't remember the names of them exactly. We never get those in stock. Kind of one of the negative things about it, it was only a one controller port, so you had to buy a Turbo Tap to do multiplayer on that. And we actually have the Turbo Tap in stock, and we have some new. They're making new stuff for them too. Like we have new controllers, just like the originals. Turbografx, that's going to be like the Turbo Booster. I think it was called Turbo Booster Plus or something like that. We also have HDMI cables for it, so you don't even need to do the AV. You can do HDMI on it. And you know what? One of my biggest mysteries in life. Maybe you guys can find out for me. Who is this kid right here?
That's not you, Mike?
With those steely,
that's not you?
Cold black eyes. I always wondered who this kid was, and I thought to myself, man, if I was this kid, I wish I would be the Turbografx 16 kid. I'd have so much street cred. Owning a game store and being on the Turbografx, I'd be unstoppable.
I bet he's really playing a Sega Genesis while they took his photo.
I bet you're right. Yeah. You don't see his hands, do you? He's playing a Genesis.
You see someone else's hands.
That was me.
But that can't be. No one knows that's his.
But so really, the Turbografx is more like, I think it had two 8-bit processors in there. They fudged it a little bit. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not the best on the technical stuff. So if you want to check out this stuff, all the stuff you see, and we have even more games in stock for the Turbografx 16, come on down to Player One and check it out. It'll be a great time.